New York City looks like the capital of the world. Skyscrapers, Wall Street, Broadway lights. But hiding behind that glitter is a history so insane, it'll make your jaw hit the floor. A man's eyeballs are locked in a safe deposit box in Manhattan right now. A full 1-mile-long island completely vanished off the coast and was never seen again. The Dutch bought the entire island of Manhattan for pocket change. A fire in 1776 may have been started by George Washington himself. And 20,000 dead bodies lie buried under a park where kids eat lunch every single day. Stick with me, because I've got 71 of the dumbest, darkest, and most shocking things in New York history. And if this hooked you already, smash that subscribe button and help me drag more curious minds into this madness. 1. Picture the summer of 1904 on the East River. Families dressed in Sunday best boarding the General Slocum steamship for a church picnic. Within minutes, flames swallowed the entire vessel. The life jackets crumbled into powder because the owner had stuffed them with cheap cork decades earlier. Over 1,021 souls perished, mostly German immigrant mothers and their little children. Captain William Van Schaik survived by steering into shallow water while his passengers burned alive behind him. 2. Back in 1886, New York lawmakers genuinely sat down and decided that passing gas inside a church was a punishable misdemeanor. Reverends across the state apparently complained that rude farmers were ruining sermons with thunderous digestive noises. The statute technically still lingers in the old books today. Imagine a police officer tapping a churchgoer on the shoulder and whispering that his beans from breakfast just became a legal violation worthy of a formal citation. 3. Back in 1975, New York City was so broke it literally sold an entire private island in the East River for just $10. Uthant Island, tiny and lonely, went for the price of a cheap pizza. The buyer was a spiritual group who wanted a peaceful meditation spot. City officials basically shrugged and signed the paperwork. Imagine bragging at Thanksgiving dinner that Grandpa owns an entire Manhattan-adjacent island that cost him less than a movie ticket. 4. On a warm June night in 1906, millionaire Harry Thaw walked up to architect Stanford White during a rooftop show at Madison Square Garden and fired 3 bullets into his face. The audience initially thought it was part of the performance. Thaw was furious that White had once seduced his showgirl wife Evelyn Nesbit. Newspapers called it the trial of the century, when Thaw pleaded insanity, served a few years in an asylum, then walked free like nothing happened. 5. Nikola Tesla, the genius who basically invented modern electricity, spent his final years inside room 3327 of the New Yorker hotel completely broke and forgotten. He claimed he had fallen in love with a white pigeon that visited his windowsill daily. In 1943, he died alone, surrounded by bird food and unpaid bills. Meanwhile, Thomas Edison was celebrated as a hero. Tesla left behind notebooks full of inventions that the FBI quietly grabbed within hours of his death. 6. Every New Yorker has slammed the crosswalk button angrily while waiting for a light. Here is the gut punch. Over half of those buttons have been quietly disconnected since the late 1980s. City engineers switched to automatic timers but never removed the buttons, because ripping them out would cost millions. So, millions of pedestrians have spent decades mashing dead plastic buttons that do absolutely nothing while secretly feeling like they were speeding things up. 7. When New York City launched its underground pneumatic mail tube system, officials needed a dramatic first shipment to impress the press. So some genius grabbed a live cat, stuffed it inside a metal canister, and blasted it through 27 miles of tubes beneath Manhattan. The terrified feline reportedly emerged alive, hissing and forever traumatized. Reporters loved it. Animal lovers did not. Nobody ever recorded the cat's name, but its underground joyride became the system's bizarre origin story. 8. On March 25, 1911, young immigrant girls were stitching blouses inside the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory when fire erupted on the 8th floor. The bosses had locked the exit doors to stop workers from sneaking breaks or stealing fabric. 146 teenage girls died, many jumping from 9th floor windows onto the sidewalk below. Horrified New Yorkers watched bodies rain down, The owners were later acquitted and even collected insurance money for the tragedy they caused. 9. Under an old New York elevator ordinance, holding a conversation inside a lift is technically forbidden. The rules ordered riders to fold their hands neatly and silently face the door like obedient schoolchildren. Lawmakers genuinely believed chatter caused accidents and distracted operators. Picture a crowded Manhattan elevator today where everyone follows this rule. Odd 70 strangers crammed shoulder to shoulder, all staring forward in terrified silence, folded hands, pretending their coworker did not just awkwardly sneeze on their neck. 10. The Collier brothers, Homer and Langley, were found dead inside their Harlem brownstone in 1947, buried under 140 tons of their own hoarded garbage. Rescuers dug for weeks through newspapers, baby carriages, and 14 entire grand pianos. Langley had apparently been crushed by his own booby trap while bringing food to his blind brother Homer, who then starved to death nearby. Police found human skulls, pickled organs in jars, and enough junk to fill 3 trucks. 11. On a quiet April evening in 1931, a mobster Joe Masseria sat inside a Coney Island restaurant playing cards with his trusted lieutenant Lucky Luciano. Luciano excused himself to the bathroom. Seconds later, 4 gunmen burst in and pumped Masseria full of bullets while he clutched the ace of spades in his dead hand. The ace became eternal Mafia legend. Luciano, of course, had orchestrated the entire hit, then calmly returned and told police he had seen absolutely nothing. 12. On Halloween night 1926, legendary escape artist Harry Houdini lay dying inside a Detroit hospital bed, but the fatal blow happened in his New York dressing room days earlier. A cocky college student named Gordon Whitehead had asked if Houdini could truly withstand any stomach punch. Before Houdini could brace, the kid swung hard. Houdini smiled through it, never complained, and kept performing. His appendix ruptured. Peritonitis killed him. The greatest escape artist could not escape one dumb sucker punch. For 13. New York City collects roughly $120 million every single year just from parking tickets slapped on UPS and FedEx delivery trucks. These companies have calculated that the fines are cheaper than renting legal parking, so they simply budget the tickets as a regular operating expense. Picture city accountants high-fiving every December, knowing brown trucks and purple trucks will always double park. The drivers shrug, the customers get packages, and New York quietly funds its budget on cardboard. 14. Every American calls her the Statue of Liberty, but her actual legal birth name is Liberty Enlightening the World. The French sculptor Frédéric Bartholdi insisted on that official title. Imagine introducing yourself with a grand, poetic name, only to have millions of tourists shorten it forever. Yeah, Lady Liberty has been patiently holding her torch since 1886, silently correcting nobody. School textbooks, movies, and Taylor Swift lyrics all refuse to use her real name. She has simply given up. 15. The 1863 draft riots turned New York City into a war zone for 4 blood-soaked days. Furious working-class mobs, angry that rich men could pay $300 to dodge the Civil War draft, rampaged through Manhattan. They torched a black orphanage filled with children. Over 100 New Yorkers died. Lincoln had to pull Union troops straight from Gettysburg Battlefield to stop it. Historians still rank it the deadliest civil disturbance in American history. 16. From 1942 until 1976, playing pinball anywhere in New York City was flat out illegal. But the mayor Fiorello LaGuardia personally smashed confiscated machines with sledgehammers while reporters snapped photos. He genuinely believed pinball was a mafia racket, stealing nickels from innocent schoolchildren. Teenagers had to sneak into basement dens to flip silver balls. The ban finally ended when a pinball wizard named Roger Sharp played a live demonstration before City Council and called his exact shot like Babe Ruth. 17. Tucked into a Greenwich Village sidewalk sits a tiny concrete triangle measuring just 25 inches across. It is the smallest piece of private property in all of New York City, called the Hess Triangle. The Hess family owned an apartment building that the city seized for road expansion in 1914. Out of pure spite, the family refused to give up this ridiculous triangle scrap. They even embedded a defiant mosaic declaring it private property forever. Tourists now step on it daily. 18. In March 1986, Queensborough President Donald Manns locked himself inside his kitchen, grabbed a long knife, and stabbed himself directly in the heart rather than face trial for a massive $3.8 million bribery scandal. His wife found him bleeding out on the floor. Manns had been one of the most powerful politicians in New York City, a man who ate lunch with mayors. Instead of a courtroom, he chose cutlery. Queens has never fully recovered from that scandal. 19. APPT Barnum's Anomalies. American Museum in Lower Manhattan was basically a carnival of weirdness on steroids. It pulled in 38 million paying visitors before burning to the ground in 1865. And that attendance was more than the entire population of the United States at the time. Inside, New Yorkers gawked at a taxidermied mermaid, a bearded lady, and a tiny man named General Tom Thumb. Barnum himself called it humbug, and happily took their nickels with a showman's grin. 20. To keep New York City's faucets flowing, officials drowned 12 entire upstate towns beneath the Catskill Aqueduct reservoirs. Thousands of farmers, shopkeepers, and families received eviction notices. Their homes, schools, and cemeteries were bulldozed or simply submerged underwater. Former residents reported watching church steeples slowly disappear beneath rising lakes. To this day, during extreme droughts, old stone foundations and rusted road signs briefly resurface like ghosts. Meanwhile, Manhattan bartenders casually brag about having the best tap water in America. 21. Deep beneath the glamorous Waldorf Astoria Hotel sits a secret underground train platform, known as Track 61. President Franklin D. Roosevelt personally used it to hide his polio wheelchair from the American public. His armored train car would roll in. An elevator would lift his limousine directly into the hotel, and nobody ever saw him struggle. Voters of that era genuinely believed their president could walk. Hollywood could not have scripted a better cover-up. The platform still exists today, dusty and forgotten. 22. On November 1st, 1918, the Malbone Street subway crash killed 93 New Yorkers in a single horrifying minute. The motorman driving that train had received only 2 hours of training. Also, he was a desperate strikebreaker, not a real conductor. He barreled into a sharp curve at 6 times the safe speed, and the wooden train cars shattered like toothpicks. Survivors described bodies stacked in the dark tunnel. The street was later renamed Empire Boulevard because nobody wanted the cursed name. 23. Releasing more than 24 balloons at one time anywhere in New York State is officially a ticketable offense. Lawmakers decided that mass balloon launches were killing sea turtles and clogging power lines. Imagine planning a surprise proposal with 30 floating balloons in Central Park and suddenly getting handed a summons by a very serious officer. Birthday parties now involve someone quietly counting, making sure that 25th balloon stays tied down. Grandma's retirement send-off just became a criminal enterprise. 24. Central Park sprawls across 840 acres, covering a larger land area than the entire sovereign nation of Monaco. That means this humble New York green space is physically bigger than a whole country where billionaires park their yachts. Tourists casually jog past squirrels, while technically covering more ground than a European royal family. Somewhere in Monaco, Prince Albert is ruling a principality smaller than a place where a guy named Steve sells hot dogs near a fountain. 25. Real live alligators have been documented inside New York City sewers on multiple confirmed occasions dating back to 1935. Sanitation workers pulled a genuine 8-foot gator out of a Harlem manhole that year. Newspapers ran screaming headlines. The leading theory is that wealthy families brought baby alligators back from Florida vacations, then flushed them when they grew teeth. Below the city streets, these scaly tourists allegedly thrived on rats and darkness. Modern inspectors still occasionally report sightings. 26. In 1926, 15-year-old Frances Heenan, nicknamed Peaches, married 51-year-old millionaire Edward Browning, known as Daddy. New York tabloids absolutely lost their minds. Months later, Peaches filed for divorce with jaw-dropping testimony. She revealed that Daddy kept a live honking goose inside their bedroom for reasons he never fully explained. He also dressed her in embarrassing outfits and paraded her around town. The judge was horrified. America was obsessed. The goose was never interviewed for comment. 27. Yeah, New York City's tap water is legally unfiltered, which means tiny transparent crustaceans called copepods are technically swimming inside every glass you pour. These microscopic critters are harmless, but they are absolutely real and alive. Orthodox Jewish leaders once declared the water non-kosher because of them. Imagine sipping a tall, refreshing glass at a Manhattan diner while thousands of invisible shrimp cousins do backstrokes down your throat. Health officials insist it is perfectly safe and packed with personality. 28. Lombardi's opened its doors in 1905 in Little Italy and became the very first pizzeria in America. Immigrant Gennaro Lombardi began selling tomato pies wrapped in paper to factory workers for a nickel each. Customers would eat them on the sidewalk, grease dripping everywhere. Today, Lombardi's still operates from its original neighborhood, pulling lines of tourists who genuinely do not realize they are standing inside pizza's American birthplace. Every slice in America quietly owes Gennaro a thank you nod. 29. The 1977 New York City blackout plunged the metropolis into 25 hours of total darkness and absolute chaos. Roughly 1,600 arson fires erupted across the boroughs. Over 3,000 New Yorkers got arrested looting storefronts. Brooklyn's Bushwick neighborhood genuinely looked like a war zone by morning. Meanwhile, hip-hop culture quietly exploded because stolen DJ equipment suddenly landed in the hands of young Bronx kids. One blackout somehow destroyed entire blocks while accidentally launching an entire global music movement. 30. While performing a puppet show from a street-facing window anywhere in New York City can legally land a person in jail for up to 30 days. 19th century lawmakers genuinely feared window puppets were distracting horse carriages and causing traffic accidents. Imagine a grandmother entertaining her grandchildren with a sock puppet while a police officer rings the doorbell with handcuffs ready. The law remains technically enforceable today. Somewhere in Brooklyn, a retired Muppet fan is living extremely dangerously. 31. Hog Island was a full 1-mile-long inhabited island sitting proudly south of Rockaway Beach. It had hotels, saloons, beach cottages, and happy vacationers lounging in the sand. Then the brutal 1893 hurricane slammed the coast and completely swallowed the entire island overnight. By morning, residents who had escaped stared in disbelief at empty ocean. Hog Island was simply gone forever. No trace remained. Imagine owning a beach house Monday and filing an insurance claim Wednesday for an address that geographically no longer exists. 32. Boss William Tweed ran New York City like his personal ATM in the 1860s, embezzling roughly $3 billion in today's money. He stuffed his pockets with kickbacks from courthouse contracts, construction deals, and imaginary repairs. The man literally bought his own jurors. Karma delivered the final punchline. Tweed died locked inside the Ludlow Street Jail, a prison he had personally helped fund and construct. He spent his last days staring at walls built with his own stolen money. 33. Fantasy author George R. R. Martin publicly admitted he loosely based the entire map of Westeros on the shape of Staten Island. Yes, the land of dragons, White Walkers, and the Iron Throne was secretly inspired by a New York City borough famous for traffic jams and landfills. Fans have since compared coastlines and found genuine similarities. Imagine Jon Snow bravely defending the Wall, which is actually just a dramatized version of the Verrazzano Bridge toll booths, during rush hour. 34. The famous East River is not actually a river at all. It is a saltwater tidal estuary that physically flows in both directions depending on ocean tides. Early Dutch settlers mislabeled it on maps, and the wrong name simply stuck for centuries. Today, millions of New Yorkers walk beside it daily, never realizing they are strolling along a confused body of water having an identity crisis. Geographers quietly shake their heads while tourists take selfies near an aquatic imposter. 35. The gorgeous ceiling constellations painted inside Grand Central Terminal are completely backward. Every zodiac sign faces the wrong direction. When embarrassed officials pointed this out to the designer back in 1913, He smoothly claimed the mistake was intentional because it represented the heavens viewed from God's perspective, looking down at Earth. That slick excuse somehow worked. Millions of Russian commuters have since walked beneath flipped stars, totally unaware they are staring at the universe's most expensive artistic mulligan. 36. On December 16, 1960, two commercial airliners collided in midair directly over Staten Island during heavy fog. 134 people perished in an instant. Burning wreckage rained down onto Brooklyn streets below. Miraculously, an 11-year-old boy named Stephen Baltz survived the initial crash. Hospital staff watched him cling to life for one brave day before succumbing. The tragedy led to the first-ever use of a black box flight recorder in a United States crash investigation. 37. In the Long Island town of Hempstead, mechanical bulls are strictly illegal. Local lawmakers apparently decided that spinning fake rodeo rides pose too much danger for bar patrons and bored teenagers. Imagine a cowboy-themed bachelor party in Hempstead, screeching to a halt because the inflatable bull violates a municipal code, and officers allegedly have authority to shut down any honky-tonk attempting this outlaw activity. Somewhere in Texas, an angry ranch hand just spit out his beer in pure disbelief. 38. The entire southern tip of Lower Manhattan, including all of Battery Park City, is completely artificial landfill. That gleaming skyline sits on dirt, rocks, and construction debris dumped into the Hudson River over centuries. Much of it came from excavated subway tunnels and the World Trade Center Foundation. Tourists photographed the Statue of Liberty from ground that geographically did not exist 200 years ago. Manhattan is essentially wearing platform shoes made of old rubble and industrial garbage. 39. During Prohibition, federal agents had a truly terrifying idea. They deliberately poisoned industrial alcohol supplies to scare Americans away from bootleg booze. 23 New Yorkers died within 48 hours of the program launching. Thousands more perished nationwide. Victims collapsed in speakeasies, bodies piling up in Bellevue hospital morgues. The government knew exactly what was happening and continued the program anyway. Today, historians openly call it state-sanctioned mass murder dressed up as public health policy enforcement. 40. Emily Warren Roebling secretly engineered the final years of Brooklyn Bridge construction after her husband Washington. Roebling fell violently ill with decompression sickness. She studied advanced mathematics, cable mechanics, and stress calculations at home just to take over. For 11 years, Emily ran daily operations, relaying orders to workers, outsmarting politicians, and solving engineering disasters. History books credited only her husband for decades. Finally, in 2018, New York City erected a proper plaque acknowledging that Emily absolutely built that iconic bridge. 41. Until 1957, a bizarre underground world existed beneath New York City where 97,000 letters a day zoomed through pneumatic tubes connecting 23 post offices. Mail canisters shot through pressurized pipes at 30 miles per hour, weaving under streets and sidewalks. Postal workers simply loaded cylinders and pushed a button. Then the entire system was abruptly abandoned as trucks took over. Those miles of tubes still sit there today, dark and empty, like forgotten veins beneath Manhattan. 42. 80 feet beneath the bustling sidewalks of Lower Manhattan sits the Federal Reserve Vault holding around 7,000 tons of actual gold bars. That stash is larger than the famous Fort Knox supply. Tourists can even take a free guided tour and stare directly at billions of dollars in shiny bricks. Security guards stand watch with deadly serious expressions. Meanwhile, hot dog vendors above street level have absolutely no clue they are standing on the richest basement floor in human history. 43. The Great Fire of 1845 ignited a saltpeter warehouse in Lower Manhattan, triggering an explosion so massive it shattered windows a full mile away. Dozens of volunteer firefighters were blown into pieces trying to contain the blaze. Flaming debris landed on rooftops across downtown, spreading fresh fires everywhere. By morning, an entire neighborhood lay in smoldering ruins. Survivors described a fireball lighting up the sky like a second sunrise. The insurance industry nearly collapsed, paying out claims afterward. 44. Thumbing your nose at someone. The classic cocking a snook gesture is still technically forbidden under an ancient New York State statute. Lawmakers from another era genuinely considered this childish insult a threat to public peace. Imagine a bratty kid on a Brooklyn sidewalk sticking his thumb on his nose and wiggling his fingers at a cop. Technically, that officer could whip out handcuffs and charge him with a misdemeanor. The law remains buried in dusty legal code books. 45. Until the 1950s, New Yorkers could only legally change apartments on one single day per year. May 1st was known across the city as Moving Day, or a day of absolute chaos. Tens of thousands of tenants simultaneously dragged furniture, screaming children, and yapping dogs through crowded streets. Horse carts jammed every avenue, beds got stuck in stairwells, fistfights erupted over sidewalk space. Landlords coordinated the madness on purpose to keep rent prices predictable. It was legally mandated citywide insanity. 46. On September 11, 2001, while New York City mourned nearly 3,000 lives lost at the World Trade Center, one completely unrelated homicide occurred somewhere else in the city. A man named Henryk Siwiak was shot dead on a Brooklyn street that same night. Because every detective in the city was buried in the Twin Towers investigation, his case never received serious attention. Over 2 decades later, his murder remains stubbornly unsolved. His family still waits for answers that likely never come. 47. On June 3, 1968, radical feminist writer Valerie Solanas walked into Andy Warhol's famous New York City art studio called The Factory and shot him 3 times. Warhol collapsed on the floor, clinically declared dead by paramedics. Doctors somehow revived him after frantic emergency surgery. Solanas had been furious that Warhol ignored her manuscript. She turned herself in that same day, calmly telling police he had too much control over her life. Warhol survived but suffered physical pain forever. 48. The Holland Tunnel's ventilation system had to be invented completely from scratch because engineers genuinely believed car exhaust fumes would asphyxiate every single driver attempting to cross. Nobody had ever built an underwater car tunnel before. ICE scientists locked volunteers in smoky chambers for weeks just to study carbon monoxide tolerance. The final system uses massive industrial fans that swap the entire tunnel's air every 90 seconds. Drivers today zip through casually, totally unaware they owe their lungs to 1920s lab rats. 49. The New York City subway system sprawls across 472 stations and 665 miles of track. Walking every inch of it end to end would take nearly 24 hours of non-stop hiking without sleep. Some train enthusiasts actually attempt this challenge, collapsing by hour 18 with swollen feet and tear-streaked faces. The system also never fully closes, meaning at 3 in the morning. Somewhere underground, a confused tourist is still trying to find Brooklyn. 50. In the Great Blizzard of 1888 buried New York City under 22 inches of snow and killed 200 people in a matter of days. Bodies were discovered frozen upright inside snowdrifts for weeks afterward. Horse carriages vanished under White Mountains. The disaster finally convinced city officials to bury every single power line underground because tangled overhead wires had snapped and electrocuted helpless victims. That storm is literally the only reason Manhattan streets are not crisscrossed with ugly spaghetti cables today. 51. Selling a dyed baby chick, duckling, or rabbit. Anywhere in New York State is a criminal offense punishable by up to 1 year in jail. Lawmakers banned the Easter tradition after decades of tiny pink and blue chicks ending up abandoned in backyards. And pet store owners who defy the ban face real handcuffs. Imagine explaining to your cellmate that your current crime involves painting a duckling lavender for a holiday photo shoot. New York takes its poultry coloring laws very seriously. 52. The narrowest house in all of New York City stands at 75.5 Bedford Street in Greenwich Village, measuring just 9.5 feet wide. Poet Edna St. Vincent Millay famously lived inside this sliver of a home in the 1920s. The kitchen could barely fit a small table. The staircase was so tight that furniture had to be hoisted through upstairs windows. Yet the property recently sold for several $1,000,000 because location beats square footage. 53. In 1975, New York City came within actual hours of declaring full bankruptcy. The Daily News screamed the legendary headline, "What Ford to City dropped dead," after President Gerald Ford refused a federal bailout. New Yorkers were furious. Trash piled up, subways broke down, and entire neighborhoods burned. Ford later claimed he never actually said those exact words. It did not matter. The headline stuck forever. Some historians argue that one brutal newspaper front page cost Ford the next presidential election. 54. In 1903, Thomas Edison's crew publicly electrocuted a circus elephant named Topsy at Coney Island in front of a massive crowd. Edison was desperately trying to prove that alternating current technology was too dangerous for American homes. Topsy had killed 3 abusive handlers, so the circus donated her for the gruesome spectacle. 1,600 volts of electricity killed the poor elephant in seconds. Scott Edison even filmed the entire horrifying event. Today, the footage exists online as one of history's darkest commercials. 55 are buried. The Second Avenue subway line was first officially promised to New Yorkers way back in 1929. Nearly 100 years later, the project remains partially unfinished. Multiple phases still sit incomplete, despite swallowing billions of taxpayer dollars. Generations of Manhattan commuters were born, grew old, and died while waiting for their promised train stations. Construction delays became a running city joke. Comedians frequently mock it as the slowest infrastructure project in American history. Great-grandchildren are now inheriting their grandparents' commuting complaints. 56. Times Square was originally called Longacre Square until 1904, named after a dull London carriage district. Became the glowing neon heart of America only after the New York Times built its famous tower there and demanded a fancy new name. Imagine millions of tourists every year descending upon Longacre Square to watch a ball drop on New Year's Eve. The rebrand was basically the greatest marketing move in New York City history. Nobody misses the old forgotten name. 57. On November 28, 2012, something miraculous happened in New York City. 0 murders, 0 stabbings, and 0 shootings were recorded across all 5 boroughs for a full 24 hours. It was the first full day of non-violence in the city's recorded history. Police officers reportedly kept double-checking reports in absolute disbelief. Bartenders, cab drivers, and bodega owners had no idea they were living through a genuinely historic, peaceful day. Yet normal chaos resumed the very next morning. 58. In the Long Island town of Babylon, practicing archery anywhere in your own backyard is completely illegal. Local officials apparently feared neighborhood children getting pierced while chasing stray soccer balls. Imagine a suburban dad setting up a wooden target on his lawn, drawing his bow, and suddenly hearing police sirens wailing down the street. Robin Hood would have served multiple prison sentences in Babylon. Somewhere in Texas, an outdoorsman is laughing so hard he nearly drops his crossbow. 59. The Bogardus building was a beautiful cast-iron landmark that was literally stolen piece by piece out of New York City storage lots, not once but twice during the 1970s. And thieves carted off priceless architectural pieces in broad daylight, while bureaucrats argued over paperwork. The building had been carefully dismantled for restoration. Instead, it simply vanished into scrap metal yards. Preservationists wept publicly. Today, nothing remains. Entire chunks of American architectural history were sold for pennies to recyclers who never asked questions. 60. On September 16, 1920, a horse-drawn wagon packed with dynamite and iron shrapnel exploded directly outside J.P. Morgan's Wall Street headquarters. 38 innocent New Yorkers died instantly, and hundreds more were wounded. Bodies flew through the air. The blast shattered windows for blocks. The FBI launched one of the largest manhunts in American history, yet after years of investigation, no suspect was ever caught. The bombing remains officially unsolved today. Scars from shrapnel still mark the Morgan Building walls. 61. On August 7, 1974, French acrobat Philippe Petiot illegally strung a steel wire between the rooftops of the Twin Towers and casually walked across it 8 times. He danced, kneeled, and even lay down 1,300 feet above Manhattan streets. Stunned commuters stared upward in pure disbelief. Police officers waited helplessly on both rooftops, unsure whether to arrest him or applaud. When Petty finally stepped off the wire, he was handcuffed and charged. Prosecutors eventually dropped everything because the stunt was too glorious. 62. Number 58 Joralemon Street in Brooklyn Heights looks exactly like a charming 19th century townhouse with elegant brick and black shutters. Look closer though. Every single window is permanently blacked out. That entire building is secretly a disguised subway ventilator, hiding an active tunnel shaft for the 4 and 5 trains. Neighbors have gotten used to the eerie, fake home with no residents. Imagine trick-or-treating there on Halloween and realizing nobody answers because nobody has lived inside for over a century. 63. One specific zip code in all of New York City, 10118, belongs exclusively to one single building and literally nobody else on Earth. That building is the iconic Empire State Building. Every letter stamped with 10118 ends up in that legendary skyscraper. Postal workers genuinely sort mail by floor and office suite. Imagine bragging on a first date about having your very own personal zip code. Also, the Empire State Building is essentially the only address in America with that level of postal exclusivity. 64. On August 8, 2007, an actual tornado roared through Brooklyn, the first confirmed tornado to strike the borough in over 100 years. The twister ripped rooftops off brownstones, flipped parked cars onto their sides, and sent wheelie bins flying through the air like frisbees. Shocked residents peeked out basement windows convinced they had somehow woken up in Kansas. Emergency sirens shrieked across the borough. Nobody died miraculously. Meteorologists declared the event one of the strangest weather moments in New York City history. 65. Under a genuinely bizarre historic New York City ordinance, walking around in public after 10 at night while wearing bedroom slippers was considered illegal. Lawmakers from another era feared that shuffling footwear attracted rats to city sidewalks. Imagine a grandmother sneaking out for late-night ice cream and getting stopped by a cop inspecting her fluffy pink slippers. The law remains buried in old code books. Somewhere in Queens tonight, a senior citizen is unknowingly living dangerously while fetching the mail. 66. In 1982, construction workers digging near the World Trade Center site made a jaw-dropping discovery. They unearthed a complete 18th century merchant ship buried 30 feet underground beneath centuries of Manhattan landfill. The wooden hull had been preserved perfectly by mud and lack of oxygen. Archaeologists carefully excavated every timber. Today, pieces of that vessel sit inside the New York State Museum. Some would imagine swinging a shovel expecting rocks and suddenly uncovering an entire pirate-era ship hiding beneath modern Manhattan. 67. Columnist Walter Winchell single-handedly destroyed countless Hollywood careers from his cramped New York City broadcast booth during the 1930s through the 1950s. At his absolute peak, over 50 million Americans either listened to his radio show or read his newspaper column every single week. One nasty line from Winchell could end a celebrity overnight. Presidents feared him. Mobsters bribed him. He invented modern gossip journalism. Today, barely anyone remembers his name, which would probably crush Winchell's ego more than anything. 68. Composer Irving Berlin wrote "God Bless America" along with roughly 1,500 other legendary songs inside New York City, despite being completely unable to read or write a single note of sheet music. Even weirder, Berlin could only play piano in the key of F sharp. He had a special transposing piano built that shifted keys mechanically with a lever. Every American holiday classic you love likely came from this immigrant genius, who basically faked being a musician his entire career brilliantly. 69. When the Brooklyn Bridge opened in 1883, New Yorkers refused to trust its safety. Rumors of collapse terrified everyone. So, in 1884, circus legend P.T. Barnum organized a spectacular parade marching 21 elephants led by the famous Jumbo straight across the bridge. Thousands of awestruck citizens watched the massive pachyderm procession plod safely from one side to the other. The bridge barely vibrated. Public confidence was instantly restored. America's greatest engineering marvel had been officially blessed by a herd of elephants. 70. America's very first underground park, called the Low Line, is planned directly beneath Manhattan's Lower East Side, inside an abandoned 1908 trolley terminal. Engineers designed special solar collectors to pipe natural sunlight down into the dark tunnels, allowing real trees and flowers to grow underground. Commuters will eventually stroll through a subterranean forest while subways rumble nearby. Construction hurdles have delayed the project repeatedly. Still, New York might soon become the first city where people literally touch grass 40 feet below street level. 71. In 1904, the brand new New York City subway system was flooded with water within just a few months of its grand opening. A manhole explosion sent torrents of water pouring directly into the pristine tunnels, leaving commuters wading knee-deep through filthy rivers underground. Officials promised the problem would be fixed quickly. Over 120 years later, the subway still regularly floods during every major rainstorm. New Yorkers have simply accepted that wet socks are part of the deal. And there you have it. 71 of the absolute dumbest, weirdest, and most jaw-dropping things ever recorded about New York. From frozen bodies in snowdrifts to elephants parading across bridges, this city truly refuses to be normal. Now the big question for you: which point made your jaw hit the floor the hardest? Drop your favorite number down in the comments below and let the debate begin. If this video made you laugh, gasp, or yell at your screen, smash that like button right now, hit subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss another wild list from Dumbest Things. Your next dose of ridiculous history is already loading. Stay curious, stay weird, and we will see you in the next one.